Hello, welcome to A Time to Think, volume 07.01, update 1. This is, sort of a part of my setting the record straight section, or a collection of videos in the Time to Think series, because there are so many things that people seem to really just get things wrong. So I just want to state my opinion, or opinions on the matter, in this case on homosexuality. Touchy subject, I guess. I've said before that I think of sin, or define sin, as anything that is contra to God's plan, His rules, His design. So anything that goes against the things that God has said to do or to not do. So if He says don't do this and you do it, then I consider that sin. But I think I need to go back and give a little more thought to when does it become a sinful thing? Is it just in the action? You see, there's a section in the Bible, a passage in the Bible, I don't remember where it is or exactly how it's phrased, but it basically seems to say that if you've thought it in your head, but maybe it's if you've committed the sin in your heart, even if you've not physically done whatever it was, that you've still sinned. But I think it's important to distinguish between temptation, being tempted by something, and actually engaging in the behavior. You see, I'm going to have to go back and do a little more studying, because I'm not a theologian, I'm really not a pastor, as I've said. I'm just someone who has opinions, and like everybody and their brother feels the need to post their ideas and opinions on YouTube. Well, I have that right too. You can disagree with them and all that, that's fine. But pretty certain it says that Jesus was tempted in every way that we're tempted. But it also says Jesus never sinned. So just being tempted by something is not sinful behavior, right? I mean, just because you have a thought, doesn't mean you're going to act on it, doesn't mean that you've committed the sin just because you've had that thought. Boy, if it did, there's no hope. I guess at some point, if you dwell upon it, if you think it through, if it's not something you just dismiss, if something comes to mind and you're like, no, and you dismiss it. If you dwell on it, if you think it through to, wow, she's so pretty, I just, I want to touch her here and there and kiss her there and this and that and the other thing and, all that stuff. And maybe at that point you have committed the sin in your heart. But if you act on it, then you've committed another. So, what is it? Either way, the long and short of it is this: I don't believe being tempted by something is a sin. Now, Genesis very clearly, very, very clearly says basically that a man will leave his family to become one flesh with his wife. Okay, so listen, this is extremely important, I think, that you get the order of things straight in your head. It says that he will become one flesh with his wife. It doesn't say he's going to become one flesh with, some girl and then marry her and then make, her his wife. So it's pretty clear that the way God plans it, wants it to work, expects it to work. His design is that you marry and then engage in all those wonderful things that come with marriage. The sex stuff. It's funny how people, even in a marriage, whatever relationship, that it's still, you don't talk about sex. Shh. It's dirty. It's naughty. It's not. It's something that as far as I know, the only way you can propagate the species, and it's a gift from God. So, but I believe it's the design of things. I believe it's God's intent, His plan, His design is that it's supposed to be, excuse me, man, woman, and only inside the marriage relationship. So by that definition, by those, those ideas or ideals, by those things, homosexuality would be considered a sin. I mean, it's just that simple. Now, you might be tempted by those things, but I don't believe just being tempted is sinful, because we're human and we're all tempted. It even says Jesus was tempted. He just never sinned. So being tempted could not be a sin because he never sinned, right? So just having the thought occur, that's not a sinful thing. If you act on it, then yes, that's a sinful thing. But I think the thing that I really want people to think about, Christians to think about, is this whole us versus them mentality. This whole, we don't feel this way, they feel that way. It's an other thing. I think I saw it online. Someone was talking about, being othered, because it's like, I think Christians have been told so long that it's an us versus them thing, that they have this adversarial, everything is we're under attack. And I'm not saying that, that there aren't forces in the world, Satan, of course, working to destroy everything. But I think this whole us versus them thing, it makes it extremely difficult to develop a relationship and to save or lead someone to salvation, to lead them to Christ, if you're immediately going from an us versus them kind of stance. If you're looking at this particular group of individuals and you're just going on and on and on about how they're in the wrong, they're sinners, you're implying that you're not, and everybody is a sinner. I mean, we all face different struggles and different burdens and different sins that some fight against, some just embrace, but that's humanity. So I know a person who's quite racist, and this person, when they're talking about someone of color, they say the word black as if they're vomiting it out of their mouth. And it's repulsive. It's like Black is how the person says the word. And it's like, if you can control your hatred towards some group, then just go to your room and pray about it a little while. Or you can't talk about people that way and then in any way show them the love God has for them. You can't, what is it? You can't lead. You'll attract more flies with honey than vinegar. You can't just constantly be screaming hatred and then turn around and be like, but I love you. Well, God loves you. I don't. You disgust me. That's not how it works. We're here to show God's love to others. There's a song by a group, the group For Him. It's called Visible, I believe, and I think one of the lyrics is something like to make the invisible God visible. And that's the very core of Christian, the whole basic, the idea, the whole tenet of Christianity is to follow Christ and to show God to the world. And if you're actively vomiting out the words, yay, yeah, that's absolutely in no way love. In no way. Anyway, you see, most people, will not be able to distinguish between a Christian hating a sin and hating them. Because if you are constantly othering people, if you're constantly putting this group into, everybody that has this behavior is that, push them aside, those individuals will not, I promise you, they will not see love. They won't see Jesus reflected in your eyes. They won't see the love of God coming through you. They'll just see your hatred and your disgust and your this and your that and your the other. You see, the thing that hurts me, bugs me to no possible end, is how ineffective some Christians are. They're horrible representatives. You're supposed to be a representative of God in your life. You're supposed to preach the gospel, and if you look back in the New Testament, Jesus may have said, go and sin no more, but he didn't spend his entire life, his entire ministry downgrading, beating around the ears every person he came across. Because it is not an us versus them. I mean, yes, like I said, there are forces in this world that are actively trying to damage, destroy the Christian faith. I'm sure of that. But we can't say that everybody who, commits this sin or, whatever, that they're, push them away. They're disgusting. we're all human. We all have the tendency, the capacity for horrible behavior. And yes, there are people in this world that there probably is no real hope for. But that's not up to you to decide. That's up to God to decide. He has the final word. You just keep on keeping on. You just keep on throwing that love out there as much as you possibly can. Just all the time. Try to let go of these us versus them, these... it doesn't mean you have to embrace sin. Excuse me. That's in no way what I'm implying. See, something that people just seem to have a really difficult time with is love versus acceptance. It's two different things. You can say, okay, I believe this behavior is sinful. I believe if you want a relationship with God, you have to turn from your sin. You have to say, this is not what matters most in my life. What matters most in my life is a relationship with God, which means I'm going to turn away from those things that are contra to God's design and His plan and His rules. I want a relationship with Him. Therefore, I don't want to do the things that hurts that relationship. I don't want to go and, do this or that or the other thing and alienate God, or to say I'm on my own, I'll do my own thing, and that He created us. He has every right to set the rules. If He says marriage is a man and a woman, and that's the only acceptable way of being intimate, is that it has to be male, female, and inside of the bounds of marriage, well, He sets the rules. So you can choose to obey them or not. You can say, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Or you can choose to just not have sex. And I know that's awful because, a person's sexuality is a very deeply ingrained. For the most part, you sort of look at it like, wait a minute. You can choose not to lie or steal or, whatever. There's times when, someone asks you if they look good in this new outfit, and you're like, oh, no, you don't, but you don't want to hurt their feelings, so you lie and tell them they do. And that's still a sin. You could choose to say, no, you look awful, I'm sorry, but I think it's not a very flattering outfit, or whatever, and then not lie. But then you've hurt somebody's feelings and so on. And, you don't want to hurt people on purpose just all the time. You want to tell the truth, but, anyway. So, but those kinds of things seem to be a lot easier to deal with, those kinds of situations, than, who you're attracted to, in that, loving, sexual kind of way. Like I said, we're all in it together. It's time we stopped, constantly pushing people into categories and, us versus them, and othering, everybody out there that doesn't see everything the way we do, because it's us, all of us. Yeah, there's some that will never choose to be, part of the community of Christ. They'll never choose to be, part of this, but you're certainly not going to get any additional, people in the fold or whatever by constantly spewing hatred. And it's just not the way you go about it. And I wish people would see that. Anyway, so I've talked a little about severity levels, sin, and how there are certainly things out there. There are sinful behaviors that are more damaging to people, to the people around those people, and to the society in general, and so on and so forth. And it's I guess it's an oversimplification to say it this way, but if you go back and look at the 10 Commandments, there are commandments covering, lying and cheating and stealing and coveting and those things. Those are the biggies, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. Gay is not mentioned in any way in the 10 Commandments. Still, it's a sin, and in God's eyes, sin is sin. It's just that simple. Anything that is a sinful behavior is a sin, and it doesn't matter if it's this or that or the other thing. To God, it's all the same. It's, again, there are things that people do that have a considerably more damaging impact on themselves and their families and their loved ones and those people around them and whatever, in society, in fact. So I don't want to make it out like, this is on the same level as this, at least as far as human standards are concerned. But the thing of it is that there are so many things that people should be looking at, as far as their behaviors. Christians, of course. It's like, I know so many. In fact, I know very few young people who haven't, engaged in some type of, sexual contact. Particularly if you're talking to young men. And I think in an earlier video, I mentioned a young man. He's a nice young man. He's a good-hearted kid. But he made a point of mentioning, he may have mentioned it more than once, that his dad was a preacher, and his uncle was a preacher, and his brother was a preacher, and he'd grown up in church, and this and that and the other. And me being the hateful jerk that I am, and I'm a hateful jerk. I just kind of wanted to stick a needle in him and say, okay, you've admitted you've had premarital sex. Didn't they cover any of that in all the years that you were in church? Did your brother never mention it? Your father, your uncle, did they never touch on those things about how you're supposed to be married and then have sex rather than have sex and then get married? I don't think he really had an answer to it. And again, I was just being a jerk. I mean, I can't name, off the top of my head, I don't know that I can name any young people that married and then, actually I do. Sorry, back that up a minute. A couple, 2 or 3 that I know waited for that night, that wedding night, and and then took those next steps in the marriage relationship. And I know some that are certainly planning it, and I think there's every chance that they will make it. Strong young man, he's an incredible fella in every way. And that's his plan, that's his goal, and I think he can do it. But we're all human, and we all make mistakes, and we're all, that's not to justify it, though. That's not to say, well, it's okay because everybody's going to, And that's the thing, because it's like, even, in Christian families, even in people who would call themselves Christian. A father has a son, he's dating this beautiful young lady, and he might say, you're not supposed to, and it's that rib that wink, 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 or whatever. And it's like, come on now, you're giving mixed signals. If it's really what the behavior that the young person should be, following, the abstinence, the virginity until that wedding night, or whatever. Don't make it out like it's a joke. Don't make it out like, well, everybody does. Well, okay, everybody does, but that doesn't make it right. And it's for most people, most Christians, and I use the quotes because there are so many people that call themselves Christian and in no way act Christian, and I mean that. There's so few that really seem to have it going on, but I don't either. So I'm not trying to single out, the world and make myself separate. That I've got it right and nobody else does. My heavens, if there's anybody on the planet who's got it wrong consistently, that's me. And I'm not one of these, I'm the chief of sinners, and say things like that and not mean it. I'm vile, and I'm not saying it for, it's what it is. But anyway, they make it out as if it's perfectly okay if you have premarital sex, as long as you're a dude and you're having that premarital sex with a girl. That it's kind of expected. The problem is with it's two guys or two girls, or that somehow this behavior is only sinful if it's contra to the majority, the heterosexual majority. That if you're doing that, if you're having premarital sex, that's fine. That's not a big deal because everybody does. So that's not a problem. But if you're in the minority, a term I've heard called a minority sin, not meaning ethnic minority. I'm not talking about, the color of a person's skin. I'm talking about if most people are doing it versus fewer people doing it. But it's like it's made out like it's fine to have premarital sex if it's if you're a young man and it happens to be a young lady that you're having this premarital sex with. But the long and short of it is, if it's outside of the bounds of marriage, then it's a sin. Period. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you want to, wink and nudge and your teenage boy and make it out like, hey, it's all right because gosh, she is pretty and I know you can't help it, and but see, we will screw up. We will inevitably, being human, we will always mess up. Christian, non-Christian, whatever. Hence the whole, Christians aren't perfect, just forgiven, which to me it always seems like it's just an excuse to, a way of excusing bad behavior. That's what it always sounds like to me. It's just like, oh well, I'm human, I can't help it. Oh well, do what I want. No. But we will keep messing up. Hopefully as time progresses and we develop a closer relationship with God, we'll see that those behaviors that affect that relationship are not behaviors that we really want. Our physical, sexual being might just be constantly at war with our logical thinking, whatever parts of ourselves. But, and no, we'll never win that war. But quit making it out as if it's okay as long as it's a young man and a young woman if they have premarital sex, but that it's wrong if it's two young men or whatever. It's wrong, period. period. No, there's not a question here. Sex is designed to be between a man and a woman inside of a married relationship. Now, if that's not where you're at in your life, I'm not going to condemn you. I'm just going to say that I believe if you want a relationship with God, that's where you've got to be. You can be in that kind of a relationship, or you can be tempted by the things that you're tempted by, but not act on them. Obviously, easier said than done. But, that's the way life works. Anyway, so what about marriage equality? If a man and woman can be married, and adult male and adult female can marry and have all the rights and privileges of a married couple, why can't two men, as long as they're of age, as long as they're adults in the state they live in? And most people are probably going to come after me on this one. They'll probably tear me a new one. I don't know that, even if I considered myself a Christian, and I don't know that I'd like to think I'm trying. I don't know. But even as a Christian, I don't know about forcing my feelings, thoughts, ideas, opinions, beliefs, on somebody else. So the long and short of it is, my knee-jerk, my first thought, feeling, theory is that if two adults choose to marry and show some sort of committed relationship like that, though I don't in any way say it should be sanctioned by the church. I don't believe that churches should perform gay marriages. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that's the way it's supposed to work. You don't, if it's a sinful behavior, and I think it certainly qualifies as such, you can't go around condoning it, accepting it. A church can't go and say, well, no, we're going to put our stamp of approval on this because it's okay. Well, not according to the Bible, not according to, the way that things are designed to work. But again, I'm not going to say that, that a couple can't have some sort of ceremony to say that they're committed, and if you want to call it marriage or not or whatever, I don't care. But I don't know about imposing my beliefs as a Christian on some other group is valid. I mean, we can express our opinions and our beliefs and say this is what the Bible says on this topic, and and so on and so forth. But I don't know about forcing others to follow those beliefs. I just don't know that that's really the way it's supposed to work. I do believe that a government is not a church. You can't force behaviors upon groups. Maybe, I don't know. Either way, the long and short of it is, I saw a graphic online. It was talking about marriage equality, and it was talking to people who feel that they should boycott those companies that support it. And it said something like, okay, so you want to boycott all the companies that support marriage equality. Well, you should start with Apple and Microsoft and Google and Facebook and all that. And it said, so now you don't have a computer or internet or smartphone or social media to tell the world what kind of bigot you are. And it's a valid point. And it's something that, it kind of bothers me how people, pick and choose. And I know someone who apparently there was some sort of series on Netflix that had a character that was supposed to be Jesus. I think it was modern day kind of thing, and I'm not sure exactly how. I don't know the storyline or anything like that. I think it was made in some other country and so on and so forth. But anyway, the long and short of it is, but this Jesus was gay. And I know at least one person who actually canceled their Netflix account because of it. Now that's fine. I mean, honestly, I'm not fussing that, oh, well, that was stupid, whatever. I mean, it's their choice. It's their money. If they feel that somehow that doing that supports the gay agenda, I don't see that, because see, the long and short of it is that, pretty much on any TV channel, there'll be things that are sort of okay for, Christian families, and there'll be things that are really like kind of not okay for Christian families, and there'll be things on Netflix that, are appropriate for you and things that are not appropriate for you. And, and like I said, it's fine if you decide to cancel your Netflix account because they have a series on there that depicts a gay Jesus, which I really don't. I mean, it's really obscene, in my opinion. Jesus, if he was tempted in that way, he didn't act upon it. He may have. The Bible says he was tempted in every way that we are tempted, but that he did not sin. And if you consider that behavior as a sinful one, then we know he didn't engage in those acts. He didn't, I don't think he married. I don't think he was, I think he lived a life of devoting himself in every way to others, to showing that love and that degree of caring. But anyway, but the individual canceled their Netflix account, and then of course later added it back when they decided, well, we'll just have to deal with it and live with it because it's too many shows I like to watch. And like I said, I'm not fussing because they did that. If that's their choice, if that's what they want to choose to do, if that's what they choose to do, that's fine. It's their life and their money and so on. But the thing of it is, something that really should be pointed out is that Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple. His net worth is over $1 billion, and I think that number is from like 2015 or something. So he's probably worth $1 trillion by now. Okay, maybe not $1 trillion. He's worth ridiculous amounts of money, and obviously a lot of that money has come from Apple, from being that chief executive officer and so on and so forth. Well, he's gay. I mean, he's openly gay. Okay? So, if you're going to cancel your Netflix account because, it has a series on there, showing or portraying a gay Jesus, which again, I don't like that at all. But if you're going to do that, why don't you just go ahead and get rid of your iPod and your iPhone and your iPad and your everything, because you really are supporting a man who is openly gay, who's now worth well over $1 billion, and so on. What Christian have you met who would have that degree of, commitment, that would actually throw out the iPhone? I mean, really? I mean, I use an iPhone. Not much, but I mean, in today's world, you pretty much kind of have to have one. I mean, if you're out and the wife needs milk and she can't reach you to tell you that, and you come home and you don't have milk, oh, end of the world. It is literally the end of the world. If she can't call you when you're out, on the lake or doing whatever you're doing at work, if she can't call you and say, bring home milk, and you come all the way from town, all the way to your house, and you don't have milk, I think the marriage should end. I think it's over at that point. I think she would have every right to tell you to leave. She should have your stuff packed when you got home. I'm serious. Okay. Not really. But anyway. But, why not take it to its logical conclusion? I don't know that you're supporting the gay agenda by buying an iPhone. You are, however, contributing ridiculous amounts of money because the things are silly expensive. Then they come out with a model that's 2% bigger than the last one, and you have to upgrade, and it costs you $1,000. I mean, yeah. I think there's a cartoonist online who goes by the oatmeal, who, he has some things I don't, care to, but he has some cartoon about, upgrading to the latest, version of whatever, that it's, 0.01% bigger than the last one, and whatever. And it's true. It's the way it works. That's driving, economy and what have you. But anyway, if you're going to cancel your Netflix account, maybe you should also at least consider the possibility of tossing the iPhone and the iPad and canceling your Facebook account and everything else. But I think we do have to live. I mean, I don't know that really buying an iPhone would be considered as supporting the gay agenda. But hey, I mean, everybody sees things differently. But like I said, if it really troubles you that much, toss it out. I mean, don't give him any more of your money. So, anyway, so let's think about what we want to talk about next. I think I'll take a brief break. All right. And thank you for bearing with me. I am getting close to the end of this. Just two more main topics I want to cover in this extraordinarily long update, which I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it as a complete long volume, but then also have it broken down into parts, and that way you just want a little chunk at a time, because boy, just all of this all at once, oh my, might be too much, might be overpowering, might be just too much to take. You might have to break it down a little at a time. Anyway, I think they go to just sort of talk about is how deeply ingrained in a human being is their sexuality. Sexuality does not begin. A person's interests, their desires, their thoughts and feelings and whatever. Being male, I can only speak from the male standpoint here. I don't know. I do have a daughter, so I have some theories. But anyway, the long and short of it is, it starts well before puberty. I mean, this is not like, this is like little boy, having thoughts that, obviously you don't know how things function necessarily and all that, but it doesn't stop you from thinking how much you want to kiss this person or that person, or how much you want to hold this person and kiss them, or whatever. So sexuality is pretty deeply ingrained. They say even in utero that young males will experience those things that happen to the male genitals, you know. Whew, it is embarrassing to talk about sex. No, it's not. You know, if you're a dude, you have a penis, I'm assuming, you know, and we know how they work, pretty much. I mean, not everybody in the world knows how they work, but, you know, most of us, from an early age, know how these things function, you know, or have some ideas, at least, as to how things are, you know, how things work to them in their heads, how they feel about things, how they think about things, the genders, you know, the gender that they're most attracted to, and, you know, all that good stuff. But this starts way before puberty. This is like way back. So I want to think just a minute, and I want you to think. It's not just a time to think for you, it's a time to think for me and anybody else that cares to listen. How deeply ingrained sexuality is. So think of it this way, and again, being male, you know, I'm going to phrase this as, you know, I'm talking to a young man. But again, I'm sure these things apply. I just, you know, I'm not female, so I can't address those kinds of things very well. But as a young man, you know, teenager, hormones raging, you know, all you can think about is sex, and it's the only thing that ever comes into your head. It's everything about you is just girls, blah, 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 blah. But I want you to think about this. If you're young, straight male, when did you decide to be a straight male? When did you decide did you make a conscious decision one morning? You wake up and you're like, well, let's see, guy or girl? Girl. Yeah, I like girls. You know, guys, you know, they smell bad and they fart. Girls don't. You knew that, right? Anyway. Okay, this is falling off the edge here. The thing of it is that while, yes, there are individuals in this world that will, you know, that they may really not care. They may have interests in both genders, or, you know, whatever. Everything seems to be getting all sorts of gray in the here and now. But the long and short of it is that generally there's a specific gender, I think, that most individuals find an attraction to, or the majority of their conscious, you know, desires and their whatever are toward a specific, you know, gender. And again, there's all sorts of cases where, I mean, you might be coerced into having a relationship with, you know, the other gender, or, you know, whatever. There are people who are so lonely that they would, you know, anybody who will show them affection, they'll, you know, be willing to have those types of relationships with. But again, most of the time, at least most of the young men I've known in my life have been like, girl, and it's the only thing that they think about, and it's the only, every action in their life is basically to win over a girl, or, you know, whatever, and that's fine, I guess, as long as, again, you wait until that wedding night, which they don't. But anyway, beside the point. But the thing of it is, for the most of us, you don't choose, you know, you don't wake up one morning and make that a conscious decision. You don't just, you wake up and say, you know, I've given it some thought, and I think I like girls. So if you, as a young heterosexual male, didn't wake up one morning and decide, consciously make the decision to like girls, it's just kind of always been that way. It's how you've always felt. From very early age, you were, you know, on fire for young ladies. Why do you assume that gay people did at some point just up and decide that they were straight up until one morning they woke up and decided, I think I'd rather not do the heterosexual thing. I think I'd rather be gay. So the point of this long-winded blathering, long-winded crap I'm spewing is just this one very simple point. If a gay man did not wake up one morning and say, I thought I was going to like girls, but no, I think I'm going to change. If they didn't make that conscious decision, why don't you cut them a little slack? I mean, sure, if they engage in those behaviors and you're a Christian, you can say that is a sinful behavior, and that's fine, and that's fine. If that's what they choose, that's what they choose. The only thing you can do if you are a Christian is just to keep on loving them, and if they ever ask, how you as a straight man who goes to church, how you can love them, and you tell them that it's because God loved me first and God loves you, and I'm here on this planet for nothing more than to show anybody that's interested that this is who God is, and He loves you, and that doesn't mean your every behavior is acceptable. There are sinful behaviors. There are things that God says, this is not the way it's supposed to go. But don't take a stick to them. I mean, don't beat them around the ears. Cut people some slack. Try to show a little compassion. They might not be comfortable in their own skin. So few of us are. Don't be mean and hateful and show nothing but disgust every time. Do everything you can to show love and compassion, and treat everybody that way. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to okay other behaviors. It doesn't mean you have to go and put a stamp on it and say, well, that's perfectly good, approved. That's not, love and acceptance are two different things. You might not accept their behavior, but if you're constantly screaming about that behavior, then it's really hard for somebody outside to really get the picture. Oh, they actually love me. They just hate what I do. They just sense hate. And that's not what you're supposed to be portraying as a Christian. That is not what you're supposed to be saying. That's not the way you lead someone to God. That's not how it works. And I don't know about everybody else, but I think the more people that are there, the cooler it's going to be. I think it's going to be amazing, period. Hope I get to see it. Anyway, all right, I've got one last thing I'm going to talk about. But I'm really going to have to get some water, a cup of coffee, something, I don't know. But anyway, so thank you again for your time. And we are almost there, I promise. Just so close. Just one more thing. Okay, I did not go in and get water or something to drink. So, I'm going to try to make this quick because it's the last little thing I wanted to talk about. Last thing I wanted to mention. It's really just sort of an exercise in thinking. It's just a little something I want you to contemplate. If you're straight Christian, again, male, female, I don't guess matters really, but again, being male, I sort of phrase it in those, frame it in those terms, I guess. But this is just really something to contemplate. It's not a scenario that would or could ever happen. But just so that you hopefully develop some little bit of compassion or or try for just even for the briefest of moments to see things from a different side of the equation. I want you, if you are a young heterosexual male that considers considers himself, again, doesn't have to be male, but just if you consider yourself as heterosexual and Christian and all that, just as something to think about, just so you can sort of maybe try to see the other side of things, and maybe hopefully develop a little compassion. That's all I'm asking. You don't have to dwell on this for very long, but just consider one thing. Just a crazy scenario, never happen. But just pretend for just a minute. Just pretend that Jesus himself came to you, and he proved to you in no uncertain terms that he was truly who he said he was. And Jesus came to you as a straight individual and said, I want you to be gay. I want you to only have, as a young man, relationships with other men. Because see, that's what's expected of individuals that are gay. They're expected to only have those relationships with that they have to change, that they have to be straight, that they have to, if they're going to engage in sexual behavior, it has to be with the opposite gender. So as someone who's straight, imagine from their side of things, look at it from their viewpoint, that they're basically being told that they cannot be who they feel that they are. They can't engage in the behaviors and have the relationships that they want to have because those are considered as sinful. So imagine the shoe was on the other foot. Imagine that Jesus told you directly that you could never have any kind of sexual relationship with a member of the opposite sex. How easy would that be for you? I mean, think you could just throw a switch, that beautiful blonde with the gorgeous body and whatever. Suddenly, you can't act on any of those feelings. I mean, it's not wrong to have those thoughts and feelings, but you can't act on them. You can only act on the other, those feelings you probably have never had, or maybe have only entertained when you were sipping, something to drink, whatever. But I mean, think about it. He says, "Hey, John, sorry, you can go out with your buddy David, or whoever, and if you're going to do anything, that's the only that's the only. It has to be David or some other dude, because you have to be, if you're going to be sexual, you have to be gay." I mean, again, that's not going to happen. We know that it's just something an exercise in thinking. What if Jesus told you had to be gay? What as a straight person, Jesus said, no, if you're going to have sex, it's going to have to be, male or female. Doesn't that give you just a little bit of, because that's what's being asked of gay people, is that they're basically being told that if they're going to have a sexual relationship, that if they want to be Christian, if they want a relationship with God, that that relationship can either be heterosexual or they can have no sexual relationship whatsoever. And that is what's being asked. That's the case. That's the situation. Doesn't that give you a little bit of compassion for this group? Can't you think, wow, what would it be like if Jesus told me I had to be gay. I mean, ugh. David stinks. Ain't no way I'm going to kiss him, or whatever. But just, again, as an exercise in trying to develop compassion, trying to think outside of the, what you know. What if he said, sorry, man, it's you, Buddy David, or, some other dude or nothing. Sorry, that's the only choices you've got. I mean, otherwise you're in a sinful, relationship. I don't know many people who could just flip a switch and say, okay, well, I guess I'll do the other. I mean, if that were really something that Jesus or God would ask of you, which of course, again, is not the case. This is just something to think about, to try to see what you're demanding or what you're saying is required of, those individuals that don't feel the way you do. Have a little compassion. I mean, it wouldn't be an easy thing. You know what I mean? To either have no sex whatsoever or only have sex with the gender that you're not attracted to. You know what I mean? And of course that has to be in a married relationship and, so on and so forth. But anyway, but just give it a little thought. I mean, how easy would it be for you? Show some compassion. Show some love. Try to understand things from somebody else's viewpoint. It might make you a better person. I'm not saying you should do these things. I'm just saying consider what it would be like to ask somebody else to. Try to develop a little bit of empathy or sympathy. Empathy. I'm really going to have to see what word means what. Empathy, sympathy. There's a difference. I think the word I'm looking for here is empathy. Yeah, sympathy sort of implies that something bad's happened and you're showing sympathy, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm rambling, and I have talked all morning long, and I really need to do something else for a little bit. So, again, thank you all so much for listening. If you have questions, if something I said didn't make sense, go to your preacher, your pastor, your priest, your whatever. Get on and Google it. I could be 1,000% wrong. I really could. But listen to it and you decide. And if I'm wrong, say, well, according to the, follow it up with some proof. You say, hey, you're wrong on this because the Bible says this, and I take that to mean that, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. Don't just say you sound like an idiot, which I know I do, so you don't have to tell me that. Anyway, so thanks for hanging around this long, and I hope everyone has a good day, and get out and get some fresh air. It's a nice day, hopefully, where you are. Anyway, bye.